Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Glad to be able to sit down with Gehrig Kunz of Hedera Hashgraph. Something that I've noticed over the past 2 months or so is consistently in the comment section and in the chat, people asking about Hedera. And I don't know the answers to those questions, so I reached out to somebody who does. So Gehrig, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We're so glad to be here and help out the community.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, so I don't know anything about Hedera, so
that's a good starting point.
Good, so take it away, blow me away.
Yeah, so really we are a public ledger. We have a permissioned set of nodes that are run by our Enterprise Governance Council, and so really that's kind of the starting point for us, right? And the goal for us is really to be this mass adopted ledger, and we think there's a few key things that public ledgers need to do differently in order to achieve that. So really, in my mind at least, the big things are performance and stability. So performance, we have this unique Hashgraph consensus algorithm that's pretty unique to the market, a different way for these nodes to come together and start to take transactions in. And so with that, we get this really high throughput and low latency things for adding data to a public ledger and sending those cryptocurrency transactions. And then stability, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty and doubt within large enterprises and business application developers. And we want to provide more of like a consistent AWS-like experience for them on building on this public ledger and this innovative technology. And really what we do by that is having a no fork guarantee for one thing, and then we also have our Enterprise Governing Council. And so this is really today led by 10 organizations. This is an IBM, a Deutsche Telekom, major players in the world that are all term limited. And so I think with that, we're doing this nice thing where we're having this stability, we're not consolidating power too much, and so it's this nice hybrid approach, I think, that can lead to a lot greater adoption within the business circles.
Great. So just to make sure that I'm on the right track,
yeah.
You guys are a layer 1 blockchain.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So this isn't a second layer, you're not building on an existing blockchain.
Yeah, this is our own thing. Our own public network is available today. We launched to open to everybody about 6 weeks ago. So we saw about 30 applications launch with us, which was really cool to see, and some early momentum there, which is awesome.
Now, what can someone do on the, what do I call it, the Hedera chain, the Hedera blockchain?
Yeah. So we are the Hedera Hashgraph, and it's a public ledger. So the Hedera Network is really what we're talking about here.
Gotcha.
The Hedera mainnet.
What can I do on that I can't do on Ethereum, that I can't do on the Bitcoin blockchain?
Yeah.
Can I do smart contracts? Can I do time-washed hack signatures? All these kind of things that.
Yeah. So there's a few different things there, right? So we have these network services that really make it nice for developers to build on us. You can do the standard cryptocurrency stuff, you can do this. I think what's most unique about us is by being Hashgraph and not having this blockchain, we can do some pretty incredible things. So for instance, you could have a file uploaded to the ledger and you can have that be GDPR compliant. And what I mean by that simply is that you could upload this file, attach signatures to it, and whoever owns those signatures can at any point remove themselves and say this file is deleted, and that can be provably deleted on the ledger. So this is kind of unique, and I think it's pretty powerful. And then with a lot of the other things we do, it's all about finality for us. So because we're not a blockchain, because we have our own consensus algorithm, we're actually able to guarantee finality. So if you're familiar with other blockchains, right, you'll send a transaction in, and over time that's going to start to try to reach a probability of 1 and being in that next block. But for us, we know within 2 to 3 seconds we're seeing today that that data is added to the ledger in that amount of time. So it's pretty on par with the Visa network, which allows you to do some more real-time interactions and have those type of modern experiences.
And you guys have your own consensus algorithm. Would you say that is kind of the core of how you guys are able to do this?
Yeah, definitely. That's the magic behind all of this. So the Hashgraph consensus algorithm was created by our co-founder and CTO, Dr. Lehman Baird. He really worked with that in permissioned environments first, and then we were trying to branch out into this public permissionless world. And so over time, we're trying to adopt this network to become truly decentralized in this permissionless environment. It'll take us some years to get there because we are proof of stake. And so that's kind of where we're headed. But yes, Hashgraph absolutely is this underlying consensus mechanism that makes everything work so efficiently and has some nice properties that achieve all of that.
So you're a proof of stake token. Mm-hmm. So the Hedera token is the native currency of the Hedera Hashgraph, right?
That's correct. It's the HBAR is what it's called. That's our cryptocurrency.
What are the token economics of this? What is the kind of the incentive to grow the economy for the end user?
Yeah, so really we're about that application usage base. So similar to Ethereum in many ways there, I think. And I'm not from a cryptocurrency background actually, so no expert there. I really come from a distributed systems, databases, enterprise deals, that kind of world. So for us, our mission is really to get as many applications and utility of the network as possible. We're seeing some pretty good traction here, especially in B2B applications. And so just as an example, we have AdStacks, which is this decentralized ad network. And so instead of having another auditor come through and understanding the views of those transactions, we can do all of that in high throughput, low latency of very fast transactions hitting the network and paying out the correct people in real time. So it's really just evolving that model and doing so on Hedera.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You talked about your system, it's a permissionless system, so this is not a permission system. Is your source code open? Are you guys on GitHub?
So we're actually permissioned today. So today that Enterprise Governing Council is running our initial set of nodes. And over time, over a course of I think 5 to 10 years or so that we've mapped out in our white papers, we're looking at becoming permissionless. And so really what we're doing there is just trying to provide that stability because we are a proof of stake system. We want to be sure we can have this network be secure enough and trustworthy for these IBMs of the world to really use that network and build some neat things. Yeah.
You talked about kind of one of the differences between Hedera Hashgraph and something like Bitcoin or Ethereum is your throughput.
Yeah,
you're able to,
definitely.
You said rival almost Visa, MasterCard in transactions per second?
Yeah, that's correct. So today we have a throttled mainnet. So we're doing about 10,000 transactions per second there. And what we're capable of, the reality of that is about 6 transactions per second in the real world. So a lot of room for new applications to come online and use that TPS. And the finality, yes, similar to swiping that credit card, right? You're getting about 3 seconds to be guaranteed there. We expect over time to ramp up that TPS to be about 100,000 or so transactions per second, and so ultimately I think that's where we're going to work towards pretty short order.
Just scaling the system out, handling more transactions per second.
Yes, exactly.
So who's your ideal client?
Yeah, this is a good question. And so we're actually at a unique spot where we're seeing really a lot of interest from enterprises, obviously from our governing model and stability within this innovative space. And so with them, they're starting to think about how can we collaborate on data securely in different environments. So maybe it's, a supply chain like use case or one of these classical examples. And then we're also seeing startups that have maybe tried out other things like Stellar or Ethereum or whatever it may be, and weren't quite happy with the performance. And so we're seeing a good amount of enterprise or startup adoption really on that side of things. So you're getting this kind of mixture here. And I think ultimately we're very good at having these B2B applications that are high throughput, low latency, taking advantage of those properties of Hashgraph in the enterprise model.
And is this going to be a chain that kind of the end users are going to transact value on, very similar to like Bitcoin, or is this something that they're going to be interacting with almost unknowingly using the applications, the enterprises that they're doing business with?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think it'll change over time. I'd like to think, right? Once we'll start off in very much a custodial-like environment where people aren't aware they're using Hedera. For instance, some of our startups are selling into enterprises today, and that enterprise doesn't need to hold the cryptocurrency, but they want to take advantage of that property of the network. Over time, I think once the consumer behavior shifts, we'll start to see, just in general in the market, right, not just Hedera, more mainstream applications that are truly decentralized. You're having your own keys, and there's better UX experiences for that. So today, more custodial, I would say. Tomorrow, more decentralized.
Sure. So, kind of an interesting perspective. You said you don't really come from a cryptocurrency background.
This is true.
So, generally this is the point where I ask, like, what gave you the Bitcoin bug? Like, how did you get into crypto? In your case, I think, correct me where I go astray, the answer is you're a skilled developer, you know what you're doing, and you were recruited for your talent.
Yeah, you know what, for me actually, I come from like this database world with Apache Cassandra and these very technical distributed systems. And a lot of consolidation of power is happening within those in terms of data being locked there. And so just the aspects of decentralization and that promise of it, I think is ultimately what's driving me and keeping me passionate about this industry in such a young age. Yeah.
Great, man.
Yeah.
We're at a really interesting time in cryptocurrency. We obviously had the big 2017 run-up,
Sure.
2018 winter, and
of course.
Now it's spring, we hope. What do you kind of see, overall for the space?
I think from my perspective, a lot of it will be driven by regulation. I think projects like Libra are obviously forcing a hand at that, which I think is beneficial for everyone. And I think we'll see, at the end of the day, regulation is going to bring ultimately really good things for us, I think, especially in these B2B use cases where we can start to define standards and using this as an auditable log that everyone can trust is going to be a really powerful use case that I think is a little untapped today in blockchain and distributed ledgers.
What do you think the biggest, barrier to entry is right now for a lot of people into cryptocurrency?
I think it depends who you're talking about in that regard, right? So we're pretty familiar with the enterprise space, and I mentioned regulation already. But I think, typically coming from, just plugging in a database and using that, right? It's a very simple process, and it's something where that enterprise has control over that. There's not too many parties that they need to work with in order to be successful. And so what we really need to do is take advantage of the network effects that blockchain and distributed ledgers and Hedera offer by creating these better standards that people can start to use and collaborate with better, for things like medical records or supply chain or whatever it might be. But removing some of the hurdles that are more mental than anything in order for these truly large, high TPS enterprises to start to use this technology.
So this is an enterprise solution to storing data more securely with the throughput they need to get the job done.
Yeah, I think that's fundamentally definitely one of our value props. On top of that, we have the Solidity smart contracts and some more innovation happening in that regard as well. But ultimately, I think so much of this space, right, is about having data that's transparent and trusted on a public ledger. And at least in my view, I think Hedera is offering a really compelling way to do that. In a way that doesn't, hurt the experiences of those engineers, developers, and does, for the solutions that they're trying to build.
So you guys, kind of tell me a little bit about how Hedera was founded. How long have you guys been around?
Yeah. So it's been a little bit of a ride. They announced Hashgraph 7 years ago now initially, and that was in the private permission settings, which is swirled. And so coming out of that, they saw the interest in really the public ledgers. And interestingly enough, Lehman Baird, who's just the mathematician, genius, iconic figure that you can imagine, he was working on this problem of Byzantine fault tolerance just outside of this Bitcoin space. He just saw a math problem that he wanted to understand better and solve. And so he was just chasing this problem and trying to find a solution for it. And then ultimately, after working for a few years in private ledgers and doing some things there, they saw the interest in the public ledgers growing, enterprises being more curious in that and saying, hey, we can do something there. So in March of last year, which seems like forever ago now, they really announced the Hedera Hashgraph public Hashgraph ledger and network. And so coming out of that, we've had a SAFT round. We launched our mainnet in August of last year, and then just in September of this year, really, we had that open access event when anybody can start to use the network and build applications and create accounts and all those good things. All the meanwhile, we're getting that enterprise governing council onboarded, getting them working on different projects that they are interested in, getting them running the nodes, and doing more of the operational day-to-day things.
So what's next on the horizon for Hedera?
Yeah, so next what we're really excited about is called Hedera Consensus Service. And so this is actually, in my view, one of the best ways to add that flexible data to a ledger. And so really we see two different things there, right? We see the startups using that in a decentralized way, but we also see an enterprise play, which is using it with Hyperledger Fabric deployments to have the privacy of that private ledger, and then you have the public trust of having the transactions run through Hedera instead of a centralized process. Yeah, so some exciting things to look out for there.
So where can builders get involved with the Hedera ecosystem? Where can users get involved with the Hedera ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have portal.hedera.com. We have test nets available. Anyone can go through that process and get started there. We have great SDKs, Java, JavaScript, the usual subjects. We have a really active developer Discord community as well to have those kind of real-time community chats and understanding of issues. And then Twitter is obviously a good place to be as well.
Good place to be.
That's right.
The bastion of breaking information in the crypto space, I would say.
Yeah, that is true.
Well, Gehrig, I really appreciate the time. Thank you for letting me learn a little bit more about Hedera and for letting the audience know as well.
Absolutely. I hope they enjoyed it, and I hope you did as well. And we're glad to be here. Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate the time.
Cheers.